Okay, week 6. Excellent. So here's our project. Script server. We are at our people page. People new. And I changed the CSS a little bit, but let's see here. Basically, we have the ability to add a person, and some of you did this with active scaffold. That's also great. You can add one person here, and you can delete that person again down to 0 and add more. So this is the JavaScript bit that came in there. The same form, exact same form, works also for edit. So if I go to 1/edit, which is person 1, then I get that guy with his addresses in it. So the homework was to make a JSON library, or make this application JSON capable to add addresses and remove addresses, and that can be tested very well with Cucumber because we don't need any JavaScript for it. You can just stick in a JSON array with an arbitrary number of addresses. For APIs, we don't need this form display. That's that makes it easier. So if we don't have that opportunity, if we need to test our HTML with JavaScript, we can no longer use this stuff. So we lose a little bit of the lightweightness nature of this. We use a little bit of speed, and we lose a little bit of the ease of setup. So because Selenium drives the browser, it drives your Firefox or IE or Safari or what have you. The advantage of that is you can test it against all the browser flavors that are out there. It is not very fast. It's slower than Cucumber. It has many moving pieces and many technologies that sort of it's summarized under an umbrella. The Selenium umbrella can actually be implemented in many different ways. People write Selenium scripts in C# and Java, for example, or JavaScript, or Ruby and RSpec. And that confuses the community a great deal. So Selenium is not equal to Selenium, especially when it comes to setup and maintaining those. That makes it a bit more brittle. Sometimes your Selenium suite just breaks for arbitrary, obscure reasons. And unless you're an IT specialist or you really understand the guts of it, it's hard to debug. That said, it can be a useful tool if you must do client-server testing and you have a rich JavaScript front end. It can also be useful for exploratory application testing. And this one I want to show you today. So, Selenium. Who has played with Selenium of any flavor, sort of flavor? Okay, a couple of people. Selenium comes with an IDE, which is a browser plugin. You can download a Firefox plugin that is basically a recorder of your mouse actions and your keyboard strokes. And if you type stuff into keyboard fields, into text fields, or if you click on things, it records that and it turns it into a Selenese script. Selenese is the native language that Selenium interprets through its remote control server. That has limited capability, that IDE, because you're not in a fully Turing-compliant programming language, and you can't do loops or if-else statements, and you cannot pull in database stuff, and you kind of it works for a few like very high-level sort of smoke tests, but it doesn't scale. So what I want to show you is how to leverage the power of RSpec and Ruby to drive Selenium scripts. And the first bit of that, which has always been very complicated, is how to write these scripts. Because Selenium is slow to execute, how to develop the scripts in a trial and error kind of way, it can be very time-consuming. And what it would be nice to do, and what I'm showing to you next, is to have some sort of script console type interface to Selenium, just like we have for Rails. If you want to try out loading somebody from the database, a person, and running operations on that guy, it would be nice to have that similar facility with Selenium. So the project that I have uploaded to GitHub comes with a few extra add-ons, and one is this debugging tool that I put in. And we can just use this to drive our Selenium. Let's take a look how that would work. So here's my server, and here is my shell console. And now I'm just going to go into the Selenium sub-project that I have in here. And all I do is now IRB. Now I'm in a standard Ruby browser. A little bigger for you? Okay. So there's a file called boot. No such file. Great. Let's see what we're missing here. So there is support. OK, it's not called lib. My slide is out of date. Thank you. It's called support. Try this along with me, because I want to see what the problems are that we're having here. So go to the Selenium spec directory and type IRB, and then let's try require support boot. Cool. OK, so I just wanted to show you what we can do with this debug environment. So now the command you can type is start new browser. And don't be afraid that there's going to be an error. There will be an error. Start new browser session.
Got an error. Sure is.
You got an error? OK. So I didn't get an error. I have this instead. Beautiful. I have the Selenium window. The reason this is because I'm running the server in the background. So take a look at this project. Take a new shell or the same shell. Go one up and try rake-t Selenium. There's a couple commands now that got added. There's Selenium rc start specifically, which is a command to launch the Selenium remote control server, which is that heavy-duty Java library that hangs out under the vendor directory, which is what makes it download take so long. And that we need to start. So if you are on Mac or Windows, you can just use these rake commands. If you're on Mac or on Linux, you can use the rake commands. On Windows, you have to start I think that's generally marked, right? You have to start Java. Go into look in the vendor directory, there's Java jar file, and just start that with Java. So if you start it, it's going to tell you something like this here. And when you run this and it all works, the server everything, you get a Firefox window like this, which has the Selenium stuff on top. OK, so you got this. So now we can talk to it. So now we have page.Selenium driver is our Selenium driver object here. That thing is the thing that communicates to the remote control server. And now we can actually run any command that is supported by the driver, such as we can open / that just tells the browser to go to that URL. And then here, it gives me this root page, which is my standard Rails homepage. So now we got this guy going. So we can now try. I just killed my thing, so I had to restart the session. So here's my browser session, and now I can have it open a page. So I can say, for example, open /people/new. Now it goes to this thing. And now I can type things into these fields here. So there's a first name area. So I want to type something in there. So now we can say page.seleniumdriver.type. That's the command. And now we have to provide it with a so-called selector. I will go over that selector syntax in a little bit. Selector or locator. For now, just know that it will take any ID you have in any field. It will take that as a way to identify the element to type stuff into. So in this case, our field is called person first name. How do I know this? Well, either I know how Rails does this, or I can go in here with Firebug. And if my thing wasn't too big, I could go with Firebug and figure out what the ID is called here. It's person first name. So that's the ID that I want there. Every time I have an ID, it's very easy to test with Selenium. The minute I don't have IDs, it becomes more complicated. And now I can tell it what to type into this so located element, which happens to be a text box, text field. And I have it type in Joe, and then here on my browser, it has now typed in the word Joe. I can do the same thing for the last name.
What URL are you after?
The people new URL. And now I have Joe Smith. Okay, so far, so we got a way to like test drive our browser now. So the reason I went through made such a big deal out of this is because I find this very useful as a debugging tool. This is why I put this at the beginning of the presentation today. I've given this Selenium presentation before, and I had it at the end, but people struggled just to figure out what commands there was. If there was a typo in their commands, stuff didn't work out. So this is an easy way to figure out, if I got this right. Like if I can type a last name in there, what if I didn't know what the element was called and I typed it like this? You can see what I did? I typed in last name, but there is no such element here. And then I get this error message that says, failure from Selenium server, element last name not found here. So this is a useful way to test drive your script step by step to see if what you're actually going to do is going to work out, which also is a corollary on this is not TDD. This is test after the fact, what we're doing right now. And this is where Selenium is most commonly used, or that's where I've seen it most commonly used, as a way to exploratively test an existing application to make sure stuff works the way you expect it to work, and it builds up a regression suite over time. Developers do it sometimes, QA people do it sometimes. To use this as a sort of BDD framework, I think would be very hard. Very hard. Not impossible, but it would be hard because the selector syntax can be very brittle. The test might not come out right. Okay, so we got that. Now, what I want to do is I want to now click the submit button. So I'm going to say click. And now it wants here the ID again, but there is no ID. If that isn't there, then the next best thing is the name. You can check that for here. Oh, there is actually an ID. I could use person submit also, or I could use the name. I don't know if you can see this in the back. Unfortunately, this is not, I can't increase the font size here. So the submit button itself has a name commit on it. So in my selector syntax, I can use the name of the field, which applies to input fields, input tags, or the ID of an element. So I'm going to click this. And then it actually went ahead and said, OK, there's a new Joe Smith now. So the application loaded it. This is OK because the address wasn't required. So this is nice and well. So you could build up your test script like this, and you can stick this in a Selenium RSpec type script. The point here that I wanted to make is, OK, we can chain these commands together. We can say, OK, type this, and then check stuff here. And that's great, but your program, and I'm not going to show this to you. Some of you may have seen this. Your program will get very unwieldy very fast. Because you're typing stuff on random pages, and then you click somewhere, and you go another page, and you type more stuff, and you check stuff. And these tests become unwieldy and unmaintainable, which leads to their abandonment very quickly, which leads to not having tests. So the reason I want to address this is because the talk was titled Page Objects. So I want to tell you how there's a better way to do this. So what are the problems with this? So here's our example that we had. You open the page, you type username, you type password. If you write this into an RSpec script, then you can abstract this page variable to be the Selenium driver. You can assign that as a method. And you can write your tests like this, and this looks kind of cute. But as I said, this gets out of sync very quickly. Because you have 2 clicks on here, for example, and these go to different pages. So in this case, you log into your home page, and then you look at your messages. And so it's unclear what context you're on. What are the problems with this? The problems are, it's a very low-level way of testing. Every time you have a text field, you type stuff in from scratch. There's no good way to abstract this out. It's hard to see what's being checked because you have so many different assertions in that file. It's hard to reuse as a result, and it's very prone to copy and paste. Some developer might look, oh, how do I log into this site? Copy and paste some Selenium script that is 10 lines long. Oh, here's how you log in. You have to navigate from that site to that site. Click that link, do this, log in. And then that code gets copy and pasted everywhere. You could write a method for it, but it's up to the developer to do it. There's no clear pattern to it. So what we want is actually some better way to make large test suites scale better, scale in terms of maintenance cost and overhead? And the answer to that is these page objects that we talked about. So what are these page objects? It's a simple definition. The page object is a concept where each page represents an object or is represented by an object. The methods on that object are things that you can do on the page, such as clicking buttons, typing in fields, checking boxes, selecting drop-downs, things you can do, or things you can see, like text you should see there, or text you should not see there, or things that appear or things that disappear somehow. But they only apply to this one page. So the page becomes an object, and its methods become the stuff you can do or see on the page. And now you have a concept that scales well, because the methods that apply are only those methods on that object, and other methods don't apply. You can chain them also. This is the second bit here. You can chain them by returning from each method that does something, like fill in first name, have that return itself, because we're still on the same page. And then you can click on something, and then it can return the next page that you're now on after it loads the next page. And that's the stuff I want to show you. So the question is page objects part of Selenium, or is this my homegrown thing? The answer is the page object concept is a pattern that has been used in the industry. I heard, I couldn't find any verification for it, but I heard that the Google spreadsheets and the Google Docs tests are done in Selenium with these page objects. And they're very complicated, as you might imagine, and they have to scale to a very large number of tests. There is a bunch of stuff done in Java, Selenium tests written in Java, that uses page objects. In fact, there was a talk given at the Selenium Selenium meetup in San Francisco a few months ago by Dante Briones, who spoke about the page objects in Java. And he had a very similar example in Java. And I searched and searched and searched. I couldn't come up with anything in Ruby. So I just threw a few things together. And it's not very hard. And this is why we're in this class here, to spread the word on this. I think the pattern is great. It hasn't been adopted in the Ruby world yet. And it's a great pattern to scale tests. And I'm not saying this because for academic reasons. I have personally been involved in the Selenium project that was so large, where we had so many helpers that people didn't know what helper were there anymore, and they ended up replicating their own helpers. We had hundreds of these helpers in one file, and people tried to structure them in a couple of files. But it became a mess so quickly. The reason being that most of the helper functions you have, helpers to log in or to verify certain stuff there or not there, those helpers don't apply in most cases that you're working on. They only apply in a very narrow circumstance. And the page objects are a way to scale that better, to factor it better. So you may notice, so I have a couple things in here. If you already download this project, you see more files. But bear with me for now. Follow along, and I'll explain to you, and we're going to build up the stuff that you're going to have there already. So there's a page object. It inherits from page. That's another key attribute. Each page object derives from a master page. That also means if you have multiple layers of the home page, you can derive from this home page object now. And you can share common functionality using an inheritance model. So there's typically always one method that's a class method. That is the visit method. So visit the home page requires homepage.visit. And you notice here, it returns a new instance of itself. Now, on the Ruby homepage, there isn't much stuff to do. But let's implement the new people page. So if I want to go to the new person or people page, typing would help people. And you see here, this is under the page classes object. So I call these the page classes, page objects, page classes. So these are the classes that implement these page objects. And then inherit this from page. And so now, first let's have a visit method, which is just going to tell me how I can view that page. So the method available in here is Selenium driver. That's the communication object that talks to the Selenium server, RC server. And here I can call stuff like open. Open. So now I want to go to /people/new. And then very important, every single method in the page object should return some other page object, either itself or the thing that I'm on now. And in this case, after I visited, I'm now on the people page.new. The reason this is important is because then I can chain the methods together. We'll see that in a sec. Okay, so this is something I can do on the new people page. So what else can I do on the new people page? I can visit it. I'm sorry? I can type in some data. So what are data items that are available on that page? We had it up here a second ago. We can type the person's first name in, right? Here. Whoa, cursor. So let's type in the guy's first name. And now I can call this, something useful. Typically, the data that comes, I don't want to hard code into the page object. So if I get some name from the outside, I can make that in a variable, and that comes from my test script. These are just constituent pieces. This is kind of like the Webrat steps a little bit. These are constituent pieces that get used by the actual test script later.
What type?
I'm sorry?
So
Selenium driver, right? Dot type, exactly. And now I need to know how to name this thing. First name. This is the ID of the input field. Now that should be hard-coded here. And if the name ever changes, if that first form ever changes, then I have this is the one place I have to update. The actual data I type in there, that is a variable that comes from the test script. Does it make sense? Okay, so I need to return something, exactly. And in this case, I'm not changing the page, I'm still on the page, and this is now an instance method, so I can just return myself, which is the page object that I'm currently on. Presumably this gets called from that page object already. And you can see where this is going. The first time I'm calling visit, and then I call visit dot fill in first name dot yada 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 dot dot dot. So the question is how are these two lines associated with each other? So the first line, as you say, tells the driver to open that URL, and the next line tells the script that now that I have opened this URL, now I'm this page object. The association is made by virtue of this method itself. Let's do the last name, and then let's write the first bit of the test script.
Why is RubyMine
RubyMine doesn't recognize this. I'm actually not sure. I think it doesn't know what type means. Okay, so now I need to write a test script. Which I already had here, but I actually want to wipe this one out, and I want to do it with you guys. Create person test script. Yes, please. So now I want to make a new script. Create person spec. And this is an RSpec thing now. So I need to, actually I call this one the Selenium spec helper to avoid name clashes here. And now I'm in RSpec land. It should something. Let's see where we get. And we need to set up something with the before filter. We need to make a page. This is maybe where the confusion comes from. So we need to get to a page somehow. And if I want to test creation of person, then I need to use the new person page object. Did I call it people? I called it the new people page. Thank you. So this is how I tell the browser, please go there, and I tell the script, now I'm on this new person or new people page, and the object that's available is this one. And now I can do all the stuff that I can do with this page. And I need to code the object to correspond to what the page is. So the object actually models the user interface. That's the key bit here. The object models the user interface. And I'm going to not fill this in right now because we're not sure what we're doing yet. But on this page now I can call methods, right? I can call such as fill in first name, and I provide the data. And now I can put a dot there because that returns the page object again, right? And so now I can chain other stuff to it. I can do multiple actions on the same page. This is chaining of page methods. And I can do other stuff. So ideally, I want to actually click something now. So, and then we can test. So when we submit the form, we should go to the index page. So create a new person, goes to index page. That's one test. But we're not done yet because this doesn't assert anything yet. So this is just the actions. The actions live in the objects, in the page objects. The stuff that we can see also live in the page objects. But the assertions, the verification of something equals something, that lives in the script. So now, after submit, let's do little by little. Stop here. Let's implement submit first. So submit goes in here. Submit is a method, something I can do on this new people page object. And it would be Selenium driver dot click. And then I can stick in the name or the ID of the submit button, which is commit. So that's the name. And I need to return something. What am I going to return here? Index page. Right, so I'm actually leaving the page now. That click, submit, will leave the page. So I now have to make a new page object that represents the index page. Very good. Index page dot new, right? Then I have to go implement the index page. Good point. We'll get there. Index page dot RB. So class follow me for a second. So again, we have a visit method, which says Selenium driver dot open, and that is / people now. It's the index page, and it will return, according to our pattern, page.new. It'll return itself, or an instance of its own class. And then we can also see stuff. So I mentioned page object methods are things you can do or you can see. So here's something we should see, for example, on index page, question mark. So this is a method that returns true and false. And I can check that the browser is now at this page. So I can use the Selenium driver object again. And there is a location method on it, which gives me the URL of the current location, of the current browser location. And that I can match, so I can, oops. I can match this, or I could just say, whoops, does this match somehow people? It's not the best of checks, but at least somehow the word people shows up in the URL. And then I have to return something again, right? What am I going to return? Now this can be a terminator function that actually breaks the chain, and you get something back that is a true or false case. Anything that you want to verify on, you have to break the chain, because then you want to do a should be something, should equal, or should be true, or should be false, or something rather. So here we probably want to return just the return of the result of this match, which is going to be true or false. Question mark methods, by convention in Ruby, return true or false. Yeah. Okay, so now back here in my script. So now I submit, and now I can now check on index page dot should be true. That's an assertion.
That's a RSpec magic.
Sorry. index page question mark.
Or do you want to say should be on index page?
Should be on index page. I don't know if that RSpec magic works for. Could work. We can try it. So what Kai is saying, the alternative syntax that is more RSpec-y would be should be on index page, and then it calls the index page question mark on that previous thing. No, there's no question mark in this case. So that's our script. Let's try it. Let's see what fails. So now this one I can run this with straight the spec command, and I just call it by its name, the create person spec. And it launches the browser, and it had one example, 0 failures. So it was pretty quick. Did you guys see that it actually changed the page? Let's try it again. No, I didn't see it either. Okay. If you don't believe it, what's the way? There's execution delay. You could do an execution delay. There is a command execution delay. You can stick that in. You can put sleeps in. There is a log. Yes, thank you. So there is a server log, right? So it actually talks to our standard server on script server at port 3000, and here's our server log. And let's see. Whoa. Jittery stuff. Something didn't get fully flushed out here. Let's see. Yes, right. Okay, so the last request was an index. And prior to this, we saw here create with Joe Smith. That was the one that came from Selenium. Not that you could tell by the difference in name of data that I've been using, but this was the one, and then it made an index request, and they were very quick. Within the same second, even here, see the timestamp, 1932:16. So, but it got there, so we can have some confidence that our test actually did the right thing. We could verify, something else. Like if this wasn't on the index, so this actually worked. Thanks, Kai, for that hint. If that wasn't on the index page, should not be. Yep. Oops, now I need to run the server again. So there's two servers running here. There's the Rails application server on port 3000, and there's the Selenium remote control server, the Java library on port 444. Four fours. Whoa. So the other question is, did this not work? So should we try the other syntax? Whoops. Should we try? Oh, come on. Submit. Should. No, dot on index page, question mark, dot should be true. Does it not even get called, right? Doesn't look quite as sexy. I still got 0 failures. Well, there should certainly be add page. Let's see. Let's do submit, right? And so add page. So now I'm on a new page. Let's print that out. New. This is how you, some ideas on debugging this stuff. So the new page should be of type index page, right? So we can see if we can print that out. I'm still not sure why the std error doesn't print. Is what?
Does that message show up in the log?
No, there is no log really. The server log is the server log, but we're not changing the application code here. This is the test script. Should not be true. Oh no, I'm not running the right spec. I'm running the one in my. I'm in a different project. I'm running. It's live demo 2 actually. Is it? I think it is. Yep, I should have changed my path. Good catch. Good catch. And now I need to be in Selenium. And now I can say spec create person. Aha, that looks better. Undefined local variable with this. Okay. Thanks for my test setup. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, let's see if we get some printouts. Let's get some printouts. Okay, here's the index page. A, we saw it, right? Then we have some stuff here. Okay, so we are on the index page. This printout comes from the line in here. This one, puts page class. So that is correct. Then on the next method call, the index page question mark method call prints the location here. std-er, the error stream. And it prints the position of the match, which is the true or false value. And so that is correct. Now the other question was, can we actually say should? What did it return? It said not to be true. Expected 22 not to be true, but it was true. So the F is a failure. It's RSpec. Okay, so it should be true. Now the question is, can we use this other syntax? New page dot should be on index page. Yeah, okay, so that worked. All good. Now we got the printouts here, and we see our server log. Our server log had definitely also the index on there as the last request. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, so I mentioned we had some stuff about pages on our application, about objects modeling that page. So the guideline with page objects is to have each page object represent a page, and it models the UI that way, in the sense that there are certain actions that that page can do, and there are certain things that it can show. If the page is very complicated, you can also break it down to smaller subcomponents and model each subcomponent as a page object, as a page component object. I want to leave it here. The code is public now. This is sort of page objects 1.0 in RSpec on Ruby. The concept is not new. The RSpec implementation is somewhat fresh. I have heard from various people that use this stuff actively, but I have not seen any open source projects about it. So what I put out there is the first open source version that I've seen. If you find others, do let me know. I'd be curious to connect with those folks. I do know this was helped by Amy from Eco Ventures. There was a communication between Kai and her, actually, that inspired this to some degree a couple of weeks ago. And I've been also inspired by the people doing it in Java and other languages that are less easy to use. And so I thought this should be in Ruby. And you guys are the first ones to hear about it in public. That gem, the W. Arnold Selenium driver gem, is a slightly modified version of the Selenium driver gem. That is a Ruby gem that already exists. And this is the Selenium driver for RSpec, for Selenium. What's new is the page object concept on top of it, which doesn't really take much. It takes the boot file, the page.rb file, and the spec helper file. Those three things. And I'll throw out a gem on this eventually. But it doesn't take much. So it's just a way to put a pattern below your source code to factor it better. And the reason we're doing it is, it's the same stuff that I mentioned before, is because of method chaining and maintainability. So we can collect our tests about a certain thing in one place, and if something changes about the page, we only have one place to update that, the implementation of the page object. So there's more to Selenium than I have time to go into. If you want to find out, you guys are smart. You can look it up online. You can also look at my presentation here. There's a big talk about locators. So what are these locators? And we ran into a few of them already. Locators are the most important thing in Selenium to grab elements on the page, to either type stuff in, to check if they're present, or to click things. Selenium comes with its own locator syntax, which is quite easy. So you can just use the ID of a tag, that what we've been using so far. Or also if the tag has a name, like an input tag, then you can also use that name interchangeably, ID or name. And you just can put it as a string, and no other qualifiers are needed. You can also use the textual description of a link. If it says link, if it says sign in or something somewhere, you can just say link equals sign, and you don't need to know the ID of that link, just the textual description. If your web developers are very clever and put background images behind blank links, then you can't use this. And so then you should tell them to put IDs there, or some other way to identify elements. I've run into this problem that some designers are clever and try to not be very verbose about the entities on the page, and that makes testing really hard. It's easier if the links that are important, or any element has an ID, or at least a class. Okay, so text verification. When you use the text question mark method from the Selenium driver, it passes that string that you put there in quotes to the Selenium system. And Selenium itself has its own flavor of text matchers. So you can put in glob colon followed by a pattern. And then the text question mark returns true or false if Selenium thinks whatever you gave it matched or didn't match. It also supports regular expression. That is different from reading out the content of an element with the text out without question mark method. And in the handout that I'm going to provide you, there's also a list of methods that you can call that the Selenium driver supports. There's two flavors of it that I want to show you briefly. If you use RubyMine or some other editor that lets you browse the project, you can browse into the project here. And on a Selenium client, it has something called the legacy driver, which is this thing. As I mentioned earlier, Selenium is based on its own language, Selenese. That is the native language that the IDE records in and that the driver understands. And you have things like methods in here, for example, key up, that simulates a key up event. And then it calls a remote control command with key up. This is the Selenese command underneath. And then it gives it the locator, the locator of the element that receives the key up event. So this file here, the legacy driver, contains the kitchen sink, everything that's available to call, fire event, focus, click add, double click. We've used a few simple ones like click so far and type, but there's lots more. And then there's something called the idiomatic driver. This comes with the Ruby driver. The idiomatic driver is more Ruby-esque. So you have a text method that returns the text of that element that the locator points to. The location we saw, that returns the URL. There's waits. I'll get into that in a sec. There's a body text. There's click. There's text question mark. This one checks if a pattern is present. And the pattern in here follows these rules that I had on the slide just now. There's two ways of dealing with text. There's checking that text subject to a given pattern in Selenium exists, and that returns true or false. And then you can do an RSpec, should be true or false. Or you can get the text of an element yourself and then do some Ruby string matching on it. So there's two ways of doing it. CSS locators are more useful. These will help you also if you have to hack up a CSS style sheet, or if you do RSpec view testing. So CSS equal A just selects the tag itself. So A is an anchor tag. So if you just give the tag, it finds that tag, the first one. You can also specify a class using a dot. That specifies all the anchor tags that have a given class, like this example. Or you can use a hash that selects a tag by ID. Or you can use both, class and ID. So each function in Selenium always wants a locator. Typically, the first argument of each function is a locator. And I'm talking about how to make locators, what kinds of syntaxes you have available to generate these locators. This is the CSS syntax for it. And I find it useful because this also applies to RSpec view testing. Like if you want to check that certain, like here's for example, test for input attributes on input tags. If you want to check that there's an input tag that has a name set to username, which would be such an input tag, you can use this rule up here to grab it, either for locating purposes in Selenium or for view testing in RSpec. The CSS equal bit is a Selenium idiosyncrasy. Waiting. We have to wait sometimes in Selenium. Unlike Cucumber, which always waits for the page load every time you do a visit, Selenium doesn't always do that. It sometimes waits for the page load, but sometimes it misses it. When we did open earlier, open/people/new, it did wait for the page to load. But if you have an AJAX request, or if you have some JavaScript action that is triggered on a click, like a box sliding open or closing, then Selenium doesn't know that it needs to wait for something to happen. So you need to actually put an explicit wait in. So the click method takes an additional attribute, wait for, and you can tell it what to wait for. You can tell it to wait for an element to appear, or an element to disappear, or text to show up, or text to disappear, or something to become visible or invisible. So that is a common source of error in Selenium scripts. And this is also what makes them brittle. If you don't wait for the right thing, then sometimes they pass, sometimes they don't pass, especially if you have a hosted environment, CI, somebody with a slow box, somebody with a fast box. There's all sorts of stuff that can break loose, which is typically based on these race conditions. So clicking on the link is an example, and you have to put an attribute, wait for page, in there. And just to show you the reference on this, here, click. Here's the click. I'm in the idiomatic driver file in the Selenium driver. It's the click function. Here's the comments to it. Here's how you can do it. You know, click locator, wait for page, pop up AJAX effects, yada yada yada, all sorts of stuff you can wait for. I want you this to be aware of if you happen to see yourself testing complicated web applications that need this kind of thing. A couple examples. Here's an element. So this is the case where AJAX makes some element appear that wasn't on the page before. You can wait for it here, and the element is the locator of the thing that shows up new, typically an ID or CSS rule. Now, sometimes elements are already on the page, but they're hidden, display none. Then you can check for them with the visibility. So appearing and disappearing is different from present and absent. And Selenium is not casual about this. It's very distinct about it. If the element is not on the page and you check for visibility, it'll fail, saying it's not on the page, so I can't check for visibility. If you're checking for presence and absence, you have to do that first if you are interested in visibility, like actually visible to the user. It's a little quirk. Good question. Visibility versus presence. If an element is far off the right page, somewhere outside of the visible area of the browser, but it's actually inside the DOM, yes, then it is present but not visible.
Oh, what do you think now is the size of the screen?
At the viewport, yeah.
Oh,
I think there's a viewport concept that has the coordinates of the screen. And you can actually put stuff outside of it, which is used sometimes for like yeah, or for this assisted technology when people can't, for a screen reader that spells out the stuff. Yeah, it needs to be in the DOM for Selenium to consider it present, and then you can check visibility on it. Okay, I promised you something about RSpec matches, custom matches. Let's do a quick example here. So there is the simple one. So sometimes I find myself wanting a comparison rule like the top one. I have two arrays, and I want to check that they have the same elements, but they're not in the same order. It doesn't actually, if I check equal on this, it says not equal, because the equal operator on the array also checks the order of the elements. So what I'd like oftentimes, though I don't care about the order, I just care about the right elements being present. What I'd like is something like this. You know, array 1 minus array 2. There's actually a minus operator that is an intersection operator, which actually is not sensitive to ordering. So this will result in an empty array, and that verifies that both arrays have the same elements. I want to implement a method that's called something like commutative. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but an array that can commute the number of the members and still be the same under commutation. And so what I'd like to implement is something like this rule. I would like to have a matcher like this. I don't have one. So there's two ways. If this is an array, I could actually augment the array with a method commutative with question mark. That's one way. So I can change the array implementation. That's not what I'm going after here. I want to show how you can make custom matchers for anything in RSpec. Okay. All right. So I want to put in here some sort of a custom matcher rule. So I want to write a test like the one I had just on the slide. And what do I need to do for this? Spec. So here, this is the test I want. I want, you know, 1, 2, 3 should be commutative with 2, 3, 1, and it should return false if the elements actually are not different. You can add that test if there's two of the same. Now, how I'm going to implement this? So I need to make a new method. Sorry, I need to make a new file, and I'm going to name this custom matchers, and this is already a new project. If you want to look, but you can follow with me here. And there's a class inside of this. And this is the same for all custom matchers in RSpec. They follow the same pattern. You need to define a class like this, and you name it according to what you want to test. And they have the same signature. So there's a constructor which takes the expected argument, and you want to save that off. Expected equals expected. And then all of these have to have a method called matches, which gets past the actual argument. And now you need to do something to check if the actual is equal the expected, and you return true if it is and false if it's not. And then it has two more methods in here, which are called failure method for should and failure method for should not. These are basically the error reporting methods. And that's all. So any custom matcher has these four things in its class. And then there's one last bit, which is actually the thing that's called commutative with expected. So this is the thing that's called from should be commutative with. And now this guy, all that does, it instantiates one of these guys. It instantiates the matcher class with the expected argument. And then the RSpec framework calls this matches method on it. So all I need to do is now fill this in. And so first of all, I want to save the actual here too. I need to save the expected, the actual values for the error reporting. They're going to be used later in the failure messages here. And so now I want to check if these arrays actually if I subtract the arrays from each other. So now this is the actual checking of the condition that I want to implement. Actual negative expected dot empty. So if the intersection is empty, then I'm going to accept that this is a pass. And now here the failure message for should, so if it didn't pass, expected actual to be commutative with expected. Kind of simple. And then the should not is very similar.
Is that backwards? Expected. It's expected to be commutative with actual.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually right. I expected the actual value to be what I expected. I didn't expect the expected value to be what's actual. It's a bit of a brain twist. And there's a knot in here. So let's see if that actually can make my test pass now. Let's put that on the side here. And let's run this guy. Very nice. Okay. I wanted to demonstrate the mechanics of making a subset, of making, not a subset matcher, of making a custom matcher. And it involves these 4 methods in the class and then this last method that it gets invoked on it. So that's that.
I have a question where,
yes.
Where you created that in the lib folder rather than under spec lib?
Yes. Spec lib tests the lib stuff inside. So these guys here, they actually test other things. So that if you had some sort of, I don't know, some library file in here, like, you know, complicated library, then your specs for that complicated library would spec lib. So what's important about access control? Access control is about controllers and views generally. The controllers are more important. You have to lock down the controller typically in a before filter type of operation against any unauthorized access to any of the actions, any of the methods in there. It should always be before filter. That's the most important part about access control. The secondary part about access control is the views, to not display anything that the given user doesn't have access to. So, for example, if there's an administration view that has, you know, a few more things, a few more partials in the page than the regular user view, then the regular user shouldn't render those partials, or shouldn't put the links, you know, to delete users or to delete the dangerous operations. Shouldn't put them there. So this is purely cosmetic, however. You know, even if the link is there, the controller should still block it. Does that make sense? The two different aspects to that. One way to do it, to use an authorization framework that has access control on it, is Devise. It's sort of the latest thinking after auth logic and prior to that RESTful authentication. And it's on GitHub. It's a great tool. And it comes with controllers and views already. It's actually it's rack-based. And it comes with controllers that deal with sign in, sign up, password reset, and the corresponding views. OK, so now let's install Devise. So the first thing we need to do is we need to lock the gem. So in here, I need to put in config, up here maybe somewhere where it's fitting, config dot typing gem Devise. And you want to lock it to a specific version because the Devise by default is already Rails 3 compatible. And 1.0.8 is the Rails 2.3 branch. So don't put a greater equal version, but put that exact version.
Why did you pick it higher rather than just at the bottom? Just curious. Experience.
Why did I put that here?
Yeah.
As opposed to the bottom? It's because the other ones are here. The comments are. Yeah. OK, so after that, you can go on with making a table. So we could augment our people table, but actually Devise comes with nice migration helpers that are useful. So I'm going to actually make a new user model, and I'm going to pretend that our people table is behind the password, and you have to have a separate login, somebody's address book. So we'll make a new migration, and we call that the create users table migration. So, and now Devise comes with some cool stuff. So you can now say t.database, make that bigger, database authenticable. And that actually makes a bunch of fields in the user that it needs, like a password, an encrypted password, and the salt, and a login, and email, all sorts of stuff that an authenticable user should have. You don't have to worry about what it does in detail. It has many more things you can put in. There's some modules. You can put in things like confirmable. That adds additional database fields for confirming a user. If you want to have a user sign up, send them an email, with a link in it, have them click on that email before they can log in. Then there needs to be a confirmable user that has a confirmed timestamp in there. And this functionality comes out of the box. So it's really cool. There's also recoverable. You know, somebody that loses their password needs a recoverable module, because that will check, you know, when the last password reset was done. There's several more fields that modules that you can add here. There's rememberable, is the user can set a cookie. Trackable, that will track the last IP they logged in from, and all sorts of cool stuff. For now, I am going to just use the simple database authenticable and timestamps. And actually, I forgot entirely the create table here. I was so excited about this. This is not in your project yet, but I'll put this in tonight. I'll push it up tonight before I send it out on the email list. So let's see if it runs. Oh. Latest migration. An error has occurred. Table users already exists. How about we do a, right, I tried this before. We're on the same database. Let's do a redo. Yes, I said drop table users now. Oh, I see. Yeah. I took it to migrations, right? That's the problem. What am I going to do? I have to, let's see here. I have to drop the table first. Well, the one way to fix this is to go to the shell, go to scriptdb console, and fix it there. So select star from schema migrations. So these are all the migrations that ran. So the trouble is I use the same database for my own development project and this live demo project. So the last migration here is one that actually shouldn't have run. So I will pretend it never ran by delete from schema migrations where version equals this. That's one. And then I have to also drop table users. Okay, so now we should be good. If you hack around like I did, I don't think so, no. Not worked. If you stay with multiple databases for multiple projects, you should be all right. But if you have the same database in 2 projects, you're bound to get in trouble like I did just now. I got my fingers burned. It's okay, though. It's okay so long you know how to recover. All right, so we have the table. So the next step is we need to make a model. And I'm just gonna, use RSpec model for that. And that's the user model. But I check to not make a migration here. If you do it in the command, then you can say --skip -migration and no fixtures, because I already have the migration, and the standard migration will not be the right one here in this case. So I made the model, this one, and now Devise tells me to stick in there some magic, Devise, database authenticable, comma, any other module I want. So Devise has these 6 or so modules. So that's it. And then the last bit is I need to set the routes up so that the controllers that it comes with can actually route properly. And that is here, map.devise for users. What this does, it makes sure that the default controllers are all hooked up right. And that's all I need. So now I can run my project. All right, access control. So I told you about that. I wanted to show you about access control. Let's first experiment it and then write a test for it. If you don't know the technology yet, writing a test can be very tedious because you don't know what you're testing for. So now let's experiment really briefly with this new tool, and then we're going to write a test for it and then commit it. So what I wanted to do is I want to make sure that the controllers here, the people controllers are only one really, is access control. So it needs to be, the person needs to be logged in before they can do anything. So this is a logged in, this is a premium feature available only to logged in users. So, and then what Devise provides is this authenticate user method as a before filter. That's a Devise method. And now what happens if I log into my people controller? Rather, if I try to make a new person or go to people index, let's try that out. See, address already in use. I have another server running somewhere. I don't know where it is though. Oh, there it is. This one, kill this one. Okay, try that again. Okay. So here's my application. So now I want to go to people, the index, a list of people. And now it says no route matches users sign in. Okay, that is interesting. So this is new. So it gets me redirected somewhere. This is a Devise feature already in the works here. Somehow the routes didn't work quite right. I thought I put it in there, but maybe I didn't. Okay, let me do this. I am going to pull over my other project that this actually worked on. I tried that before. Let's go here. And I haven't pushed that bit up yet, which is the exact same stuff, so I'm surprised this actually didn't work right now. So we have the users here, the route. We have the model here. We have the migration, and so let's see. Oh, I need a different port now. I need to rerun the server here. Then I have undefined method email for user. Oh, there was a migration problem, perhaps, huh? Interesting. Let's try this one more time. Run the migration. Authenticatable, yeah. It would give me a runtime error if it had a problem here. Okay, let's try that one more time. And there we go. There's our sign-in screen. Okay, so I don't know what went wrong in the demo earlier. I thought I tried the exact same stuff that I tried before, but oh well. So there's one issue now. I don't have a user. I need to create a user to sign in with. So if you install the full-blown project, it comes with actually a registration module that you can sign up with, and it sends an email, and you get the confirmation link. But not having that, we take the poor man's version of it. We just go to script console and call user create. So we just say, no, I mean user. User is different from person, right? User is the authenticatable user. Dot create, and these guys have emails that they log in with, and they have a password. Now this password here is the one that would be provided from the controller if there was a review to it. So this is the clear text password. That's the last time I'm going to see this. It gets encrypted now, and you see here, this is the record. It has an encrypted password with a password salt. Now I have that user in the database, and I can now use that user to sign in. joe@example.com with password. Okay. And now I'm signed in. It says here, signed in successfully. So the sign-in screen, the flash message, and all the guts of the mechanics of this comes all from the Devise module, or the Devise gem. So if I go to sign users/sign out, I think that's the URL for logging out. And then it can't find a root path. So it wants to redirect me to a root path right now. Devise wants to give me to a root path, but there's no root path defined in my routes. And then if I go to /people, it has the same redirect if I type it right. It signs me back in. It wants me to sign in again. Okay, so now we have a feature to access control the index list. What I was saying earlier, so here, our people controller with this before filter line is now access controlled. Now the question is, how do I write an RSpec test for this? That's the question. And that's really simple. So all this setup was there to show you one line of code for the people controller.
For all actions on the people controller.
For all the actions, yeah, or whatever you want to protect. This thing also takes, the before filter takes additional attributes such as only or except, and you can exclude certain actions or require it for certain actions only. That's a good point. So controller specs here. So let's pull this one up. This one, let's see, I needed to test regdb test prepare first. Regdb test prepare. Okay, let's see how this does now. This test. Wow, that's surprising. Oh, I did. Thank you. I undid this, right? So if I put this back in and I run the test again, then they should all fail. Yeah, this is why I was. So now they all fail, and they say undefined method authenticate. So the first problem is that it doesn't know the Devise stuff. So we need to include the Devise test helper here. Let's see what that's actually called. Include Devise test helpers. So in my spec, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to include this. So include the Devise test helpers. And that gives me some more stuff. So now it has a bunch of failures here which have sort of obscure errors to them. Expected person got nil, you know, some other things fail weirdly. And the reason for this is that, see if we have some sort of, I took all those tests out. It's redirecting me. It's not actually going to the action, but it's redirecting me. So if I want those tests to pass again, I need to sign in a user. So, and Devise has another helper for that. It has a sign in method. Add user, and I need to make a user, so let's make one just the way you could make a factory for this, or for the sake of brevity right now I'm just going to make one here. I still haven't tested what happens if I'm not signed in. So at least I restore the previous test functionality. So now I should probably put this in a context here. Context when signed in. Whoops, what happen? Do And all this stuff goes into that context. So, and then I can have another case up here, context when not signed in. Do before, oh well, let's see. So what do I want to test now? I want to go to some controller action and I want to be intercepted. It should redirect to login. And it should do this pretty much in any controller action. Now it comes, to what granularity you want to test this depends to what granularity you want to implement it. If everything is covered, then you only have to test one. If you want to be more fine-grained, what Aihi was saying earlier, only new should not be covered, but create should be, then you have to be more careful. So if I get index, then I should redirect, should be redirected to. And I think the path here would be users sign in or something. Let's see how that goes. Run. Should redirect to, redirect to, redirect to. There we go. Now it's italics. Okay, expected redirect to users sign in, but got redirect to users test host sign in something something. So you could, multiple ways of doing this now. You could either name, so Devise is a way to name routes also. You could use a named route for that. You could just copy this from here into the test now. That's one way of doing it. Somebody says no. This is the test host that the tests run against. This is not bad, actually. The real check, though, is we want to make sure that this fails the right place when we are. So now we have all the passes, right? When I comment this back out, let's see what it says then. Expected redirect to. So the reason the other guys are all passing is because I signed in anyway, right? So, but this is the case that catches me. Expected redirect to log in, it got no redirect. So this is the verification that is actually requiring access control. I wanted to close with a couple comments on test-driven development. We have spent 6 weeks talking about test-driven development, and I find there's 4 advantages of doing this kind of thing. The one is that I've been driving home all this time is the design improves. If you test as you go, then your code gets so much better structured because you have to be able to test the code. That tends to make the code more modular, gives it more access points, tends to factor it better, all very naturally. It's a natural driving force toward better coding if you think about testing first. The whole fat model skinny controller thing flows from that. It's another convergence to the same concept. The focus is on the project is better. Project management improves because you know when you test pass, you're done. You can check in stuff. You can deliver stuff. You can also know if you have trouble writing a test, a higher level test, even like an integration test, and you're not sure how to write it. Maybe that means you're not understanding the feature correctly. I quite often find myself discussing a feature with my colleague, and we say we actually don't know what we're trying to implement here. Let's call someone. Let's call the client. Let's call the project manager. Let's call someone to ask questions before we write the spec for it. This is a cheap way to, this is the shortest kind of circuit you can have to avoid miscommunications and misdirected feature development. Benefit number 3 is, well, it builds in documentation automatically. Your RSpec suite shows you how to use the APIs, how to use the controllers, how to use the stuff. The Cucumber suite, is even more evolved in that regard. It's always current because tests run. The documentation is the test that runs as the specification. It's a closed loop circuit. And number 4 is, well, you end up with tests. You know, that's great because tests is no longer a chore that comes after, that is sort of a drudgery work. It actually builds into your process and makes the accomplishment even better because you know when you're done, you know what you've accomplished. You see that green bar, and that's great. Last comment on outside-in versus inside-out development. We've had this conversation about it, and my pragmatic and practical feeling is that you should start somewhere with something you understand about the project or the problem you're trying to solve. That can be at the model layer if you tend to be thinking in model terms. It can be at the view layer or the controller layer if you tend to think more in UI terms. Start somewhere. And then from there, write a test. And then you will discover the stuff that you need that you haven't done yet. What the BDD people then tell you is, well, at this point, start mocking stuff. What I would tell you is actually start putting pendings in and then implement the bits that you have discovered that you need next. The discovery process is quite a natural process of software development. In fact, I've written in some books that software development is really just a process of discovery, first of all and foremost. So the discovery is good. Put a pending and now work on the model if you start with a controller. Or, you know, you finish the model and now you need some other bit in the controller before you can actually hook stuff up. So go there next. And anytime you put a pending, you know, you could commit the code. You know, it's okay. You can go to the next day. You know, if you're not finished yet, that's all right. But keep this loop tight here. You know, make the failing tests pending. If they're failing because other stuff's missing, implement what's missing and then resume. Keep this loop tight. Don't put lots of pendings, you know, in random places that you never go back to because that is just the same as overspeccing the project. And this is, for me, is the inside-out discovery of the application, what it should do. And thereby, I thank you very much for your attention and your attendance. And I hope it's been useful.